طيب بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. With regards to this man who made this act, was it a reoccurring thing? Was he ignorant? Did he do it out of ignorance? So on and so forth. This hadith does not specify how much knowledge he had or had not. But that which is apparent from the hadith is that he lacked knowledge, but he wasn't totally ignorant. Whereas he knew how to go to the Prophet. And he knew that intercourse during the day of Ramadan was haram and something which was ruinous. It was what? Ruinous. So he had that much fiqh for sure. But obviously the general concept or the presupposed notion is that if a person is knowledgeable and pious and righteous, they wouldn't fall into something like that. But that doesn't, la yalzam. A knowledgeable person, a righteous person could make a what? A mistake. As a wise man once said, speaking about his own leader, dictator of his country that he was proud to be a citizen of. He says a great man can make an awful mistake. A great man can make a what? Awful mistake. Meaning the higher you up, the higher the stakes are. A great person of knowledge of this and that could make a what? A really bad decision. It's possible. Making those bad decisions over and over again, 100 of them, different story. The quality of a person is supposed to prevent you from that. But it can what? It can happen. As far as was it reoccurring, the first part of the question, then the dhahir is that no. You mentioned it one time, okay, and then clearly explained that there are different versions of this hadith, meaning that it only happened what? Once. And it wasn't 2 or 3, 4 different stories of different people, let alone of the what? Of the same person. Wallahu a'lam.
Initials SM from London, UK. How is a Muslim country defined, and what is the ruling on building a church in a Muslim country?
A question comes from London. How is a Muslim country defined, and what's the ruling on building a church in a Muslim country? Jazakallahu khairan. One could argue over the terminology being used, and that's a very, very widespread issue. As Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and others have stated, that most people, they differ on the what? Alfaz, the wordings, terminology, words. You say this, you say that, I understand this, I interpret your speech, so on and so forth. So the terminology of Muslim country versus Islamic country, is there a difference between the two? Is there a difference between the two? Muslim country versus Islamic country. Is there a difference between the two, or are they synonymous? At the end of the day, we all understand what they're trying to say. Inshallah, but some might say that there is a difference. Muslim country versus a what? An Islamic country. At the end of the day, the ulama of Islam, they mention general principles and general points. And it's not always something which is decisive, right to the point. Some of them mention that the adhan is done openly and publicly. Openly and publicly. Not just one adhan and one masjid or on a speaker, but the adhan, what? Rings, it sounds throughout the what? Throughout the country. Others, they say, أن يكون الإسلام ظاهرا. Islam is outward, manifest. It's vibrant, it's living, it's humming. You can see it, you can feel it. Not perfect. Not everything is perfect, but Islam is clearly there. It's what? It's clearly there as a whole, as a majority. Okay? Another dabit, another very important principle is the concept of the Muslims being the majority. The Muslims being the what? The overwhelming majority. Or the concept of the Muslims being dominant in the country. They dictate. They run the policy. Alright? Let alone actual law. The actual affairs of court. Of the actual judiciary issues. In which the Constitution is Islamic. The Constitution is actually what? Islamic. Okay? And it's not based off of man-made laws. And then obviously the Sharia, constitutions, these issues, the courts, these different edicts, these verdicts, there's a detailed discussion. And many people, they make a mistake with regards to the Sharia and the courts. They make a mistake, right or left. And they don't understand the difference between that which is textual, that which is the issue of consensus, that which is the constitution, and the application of that. Are we understanding this? And there are many, many different details with regards to that. All right, so these are some of the things that some ulama mentioned with regards to how a country is determined to be Muslim / what? Islamic. All right. As far as what is the ruling on building a church in a Muslim / Islamic country, then Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he quotes many of the ulama of the past, let alone the Dalil from Kitab and Sunnah, is that Ahlul Dhimma, the people who are of Dhimmis, they live in the Muslim land under the protection of the Muslims, so on and so forth. They are not allowed to allow them to build any type of church or symbol or temple or synagogue or any type of monastery in which they practice their religion other than that of al-Islam. As far as their practice in their homes, behind closed doors, they're free to do that. But no church can be built, no synagogue can be made, no temple can be made. They are not allowed to have any type of outward religious symbols and manifestations of their deen. What they do behind closed doors, different story. But it cannot be outward, it cannot be apparent. Bells and things like this cannot be in the lands of the Muslims. All right? So that's the ruling on that in brief. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.
From London, UK, initials SR. The question is, does the angel of death let some people know when their soul will be taken? I have heard stories saying they were told. Is this for the righteous soul?
Question is from London once more. Does the angel of death inform people that they're about to die, that their soul is about to be taken, and give them a heads up? I've heard stories about this. Is this for the righteous, so on and so forth? In general, I don't know about that. I've never heard anything from the Quran and the Sunnah regarding this. And I've never read any statements of any ulama regarding this. I don't know about that. Allahu a'lam. Al-asl is that they go to the person and they take their soul. That's the asl. All right? We have the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, of course, with the angel of death. And how he told the angel of death to come back. And the deal that was made with Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Right? We understand this? And then we have the concept of, does the questioner mean is that this is min karamat al-awliya? Is that this could be something that could be special and miraculous? Something that Allah chooses to give to one of His righteous, pious servants. Allahu alam. Allahu alam. In general, the ulama of Islam, they mention that the karamat of the awliya, which people may call miracles, or they call miracles of saints, right? Such as Catholics. How does a person become a saint? They have to perform a what? A miracle, right? That's the concept of a person being something, they're being supported by God, that they're giving something supernatural, miraculous, to prove that they have a status with God. And al-Islam, the ulama of Islam clearly explain karamatul awliya, is that the awliya of Allah, the walis of Allah, Allah Azza wa Jal has the ability to give them special things during times of difficulty and need. And there are many stories about the companions doing things that were above and beyond that which was normal and natural. Walking upon water, the companions being able to see a place and they're standing in one place. There are many, many things like this, all right? And this is from the way of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and we do not deny these things. As Shaykh Hussain ibn Taymiyyah has mentioned in Al-Aqidah al-Wasitiyah, we do not deny these things and we affirm these things. And if a person affirms these things, it does not mean that they're a Sufi. It doesn't mean that they're Braylawi or Deobandi or something like this. It does not mean that. Rather, that's from the extremism of the people who go too far and running away from those people. And an interesting fact is that you'll find some of the most extreme people, they come from these backgrounds. If you stop and sit down and look at the people who go the hardest in extremism and saying what is the correct way, Ahlul Sunnah, the Salaf al-Salih, you'll find most of them come from Deobandi, Braylawi backgrounds. Most of them. And that has an effect upon their minds. They were in one extreme bid'ah, and it caused them to do what? On the other side. Everyone understand this? Just look. You find many people like this. They come from extreme backgrounds. Everyone understand this? They leave off those things. They supposedly adopt the way of the Salaf, the ulama and you find them do what? They go extreme in that direction. Okay? That's not a what? It's not a coincidence or an accident. All right? So with that being said, Allah knows best. Is that possible? Did that happen? Allahu a'lam. But if Allah wanted it to be, what?
It would be.
Next question.
Next question comes from West London, initials AY. Mufti, can you please shed some light on the verse in Surah Ghafir wherein the Messenger of Allah is told to say, I am forbidden from worshiping other than Allah, since evidence has come from my Lord.
Question from London again, West London. A verse from Surah Ghafir that I've been forbidden to worship other than Allah because of the bayinat, the clear proofs that have come to me from my Lord. Please shed light upon this verse. The verse is clear that you're forbidden from making shirk with Allah because of knowledge, because of common sense, because Allah has guided you and shown you that shirk is false and makes no sense. It makes no sense based off of the text of the Kitab and the Sunnah. وَعَبُدُ اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah and take no partners with Him. Allah tells us those whom you call upon besides Allah, what do? Can they hear you? Do they respond to you? What will take place on the day of judgment? مَا يَمْلِكُونَ. They don't bear مِنْ قِطْمِيرٍ. They don't even control a date seed. And then verse after verse after verse in which Allah Azza wa Jal demolishes and dismantles the reasons why people attach themselves to false gods. First and foremost, let alone common sense that Allah has blessed the human with, or the human is supposed to have. How does it make sense for me to worship these gods and these idols? Every country, every land, every culture, they have gods. The Chinese have 300 gods. The Japanese have 1,000 gods. The Indians have 6,000 gods. The Vikings have these amount of gods. The indigenous people of the United States or America, they have these gods. The Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans. The West Africans have these gods. Gods everywhere. Makes no sense. He was living, then he died, then he became a god. Who made him a god? It doesn't make any sense. So clear proofs from the Quran and the Sunnah, from Revelation, the prophets and the messengers, let alone what? Common sense, the universe, is that it doesn't make sense to worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala under any circumstance. Wallahu a'lam.
Initials OA from Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. May Allah bless you. What other objective sciences do we get from the Quran and Sunnah besides Aqidah and Fiqh? Also, could you please make a part 2 of the FMF called Daily Bread?
Question comes from Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. What other sub-sciences or subsidiary studies of knowledge or field of study do we get from the Quran and Sunnah besides Aqidah and Fiqh? Also, can you make a second part to the FMF on Daily Bread? Jazakallah khairan. Inshallah, the request is noted with regards to that benefit that we did maybe 3-4 years ago in Medina called Daily Bread, about how the student of knowledge is supposed to live and what are you supposed to do in your day-to-day interaction with your books, your teachers, etc. Inshallah. As far as the second part of the question, what sciences are extracted from the Quran and Sunnah besides Aqidah and Fiqh? There are countless sciences extracted from the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay? Some researchers, they say, is that the Arabic language is extremely indebted to Islam. The Arabic language. And that the advent of Islam and the epic of Islam, that did nothing but what? Skyrocket the status, the importance, and the attention paid to the what? Arabic language. No doubt about that. So from the sciences of the Quran and the Sunnah is the Arabic language. Even though there's Arabic language without the Quran and the Sunnah. And a person can study the Arabic language without being a Muslim, or without even studying the Quran and the Sunnah. Everyone understand this? So that's just an example. Okay, we have the sciences of Hadith. No doubt about that. Ibn Rijal. There's no question about that. Biographical evaluation. Narrators. Okay, Usul al-Fiqh, Qawaid Fiqhiyah, general principles, Seerah. There are many different fields of study that the ulama of Islam mentioned with regards to things that can be taken from the Quran and the Sunnah directly and indirectly, besides Aqidah and besides Fiqh. Wallahu a'lam. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Initials F. Ali from London, UK. What's the ruling on speeding? And did the Prophet ever speed with his camels?
What's the ruling on speeding? And did the Prophet ever speed with his camel? It's not a bad question. It depends. We have the general concept of obeying the law of the land, which many Muslims, this is going to be our last question tonight as well. Many Muslims, they abuse this concept. Many Muslims, they misunderstand this. and they say you have to obey the law of the land. You got to obey the law of the land. That's not absolute. There's some laws of this land which are in direct opposition to Allah and His Messenger, and cannot be what? Obeyed. All right, that's first and foremost. Secondly, many people, they say that you have to obey the law of the land even if it's not even mandatory. Okay, such as a person losing out on something. It doesn't mean that it's illegal. Let's take the example of polygyny. You may live in a country, you may live in Holland or France, let alone the United States, in which if you have more than one wife, she won't receive the same amount of benefits as the first wife gets if you're married through the courts, right? Inheritance, so on and so forth. But does it state that it's what? Illegal? Did they say that it's illegal to practice polygyny? They didn't necessarily say that. But they said if you do have a second wife, she won't be acknowledged. So a person says, or a woman, a man or woman, it says, you can't get married to a second wife living in Holland or France because you have to obey the law of the land. That's a mistake. That's incorrect thinking right there. And I have to say this as an amana. Many Muslims, they abuse that principle. And let alone the fact, what's the dalil for that principle? From the Quran and Sunnah. What's the dalil that states that you have to obey the law of the land? Where's that? Where does it state that at? Quran and Sunnah tell us to obey the leaders from among you. Talking about what? Muslims. In a Muslim state, in an Islamic place. Everyone understand this? Okay? Are there other principles and general dalil? We're not denying that. But people, they abuse it. Alright? That's first and foremost. So, obeying the law of the land, the ulama of Islam, they also mention a very important principle, is that every ruling that is a part of a man-made legal system doesn't mean that it's going against the Sharia. There are certain things that people think of and make up and conjure and put together which may coincide with what? The Sharia. But the system as a whole is what? Man-made. And it's not Sharia-based. Everyone understand this? Next point is that there are many principles of the law of the land, Sharia, non-Sharia, which clearly you can understand the reason behind. Now when you drive, if you just stop and think about driving, every single thing out there makes sense. They clearly tell you 20 miles per hour on this ramp. You can do 30, you can do 40, but you may find a bit of a difficulty turning or slowing down. You may lose control. But if you drove 20 miles per hour on a ramp, you'll find no difficulty in making that sharp turn. Right or wrong, I would say. Makes sense to just do 20. A yellow light, slow down. A red light, four-way, all-way. Cars are going. It's common sense. Merging, who has the right of way? It's raining outside, so on and so forth. Put on your hazard lights. It makes total sense. So if you're pulled over and you're given a ticket, or the officer or the state trooper says you were doing this, you were going too fast, you were going too slow, you were in the passing lane, it makes total sense. So why wouldn't you obey those laws? So if it's raining outside, there are cars outside, there are things, you have a blind spot, why would you want to speed? Let alone the fact is that there are levels to speeding. If you're in a 50 mile per hour zone, you're doing 80. That's what? A problem. All right? 55, 60. Let alone it depends what type of car you're driving. If you're driving a Porsche. The brother, he said in Canada, he said if someone pulls me over, he says, I'll tell the state trooper, I'll tell him. He says, you can't expect me to do the speed limit driving this, do you? He said this. He said, send a ticket to the Porsche. You expect me to do 50 driving this? I don't understand this. So the point, I'm trying to make a point here, is that there are certain laws which make total what? Sense. And if they make sense, then you should what? You should obey them. It's a benefit for you, and it's a benefit for what? Other people. This does not mean in an extreme situation you can't speed. It doesn't mean that you have to do 50, and if you do 51, you're sinful. It doesn't mean that. Everyone understand this? It doesn't mean if you do 60 that you're getting what? A sin. Now, you're driving recklessly. You're driving heedlessly. You're endangering other people. You're endangering yourself. That's a what? Different story. Everyone understand that? Maybe a what? Maybe a different story. Did the Prophet ever speed? There are hadiths in which the Prophet ﷺ rode very, in a fast way. The Prophet ﷺ camel that used to race. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he attacked Khaybar, he moved so fast that his izar went up on his leg. Anas radiallahu narrated. And he says, Allahu Akbar, kharibat Khaybar. Inna idha nazalna bisahati qawmin fasa'a sabah al-mundirin. We read this the other day, right? That he rushed and he says Khaybar is ruined. And he was moving what? Vigorously. Allah mentions in the Quran, وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبَحًا. Those steeds of war, the horses that do what? Allah, he says what? what do? Huh? Muriyati qadaha. Their hooves move so fast that it makes what? Sparks. It's a powerful animal. And it's moving what? وهكذا. Huh? والله أعلم. جزاكم الله خيرا. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد.